Brent, welcome to the show.
Hey there. Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Very happy to have you. First off, why don't you tell me a little bit about your company, AMZ Pathfinder?
Yeah, sure. So we're an Amazon services agency, primarily focusing on advertising, which is what we've done for many years. But now we do content services. That is to say, helping people's products and pages on Amazon look better. And we do external traffic too. So driving external traffic to the Amazon ecosystem. Those are kind of our three pillars these days.
Great. And so you started this company about 8 years ago, correct?
Yeah, it's been a long time, actually, Alex. I kind of fell into it, and I don't know if you want to get like too much into the backstory, but yeah, it was something that I kind of happened across by accident, having a background in paid search advertising with Google, and then just having the fortune to kind of come across Amazon just as that wave was kind of cresting. So,
Hmm.
as I think most people should who find some sort of traction or success, there's also an element of like luck to these things, right?
Sure. And that's part of the question I was leading into in terms of like 8 years ago in this industry is like a lifetime ago, if I'm being honest. And around that time period in 2015, that was when Amazon was really kind of elbowing its way away from the competition. I remember first hearing
Hmm.
about Amazon probably 20 years ago, maybe something like that. But
Yeah.
the first time it kind of really developed itself into the zeitgeist was around that time period. So I'm interested in how that impacts the inception of AMZ Pathfinder.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to trace a sort of timeline that might be interesting. So, I would say, yeah, Amazon's been around since what, the late '90s.
Mm-hmm.
But for many years, Amazon was primarily a marketplace that's like what Amazon calls like 1P or vendor. So it's like Amazon approaches Adidas and they say like, hey, we want to sell your shoes. Work with us and we'll put them on our marketplace. You get distribution, and then they work with these like well capitalized large brands that have existing distribution channels, like they're at Shoe Locker and like stuff like that. What really happened in the I would say the early 2010s, the teens. Do we have a name for that decade yet? The teens. um,
That sounds right.
yeah, which is basically like people started to do wholesale on Amazon. They started to do retail arbitrage, which is basically buy stuff from like a Walmart and then sell it for more on Amazon. Or wholesale is like work with a manufacturer who's not on Amazon, doesn't have distribution channels. And then that evolved into what became called like private label. And that craze, I think, really
Mm-hmm.
started to take off in, I would say, 2014, 2015. And that's also the same year, 2014, that Amazon advertising launched as a platform. When Amazon said, hey, we have all these eyeballs, we can make our own retail media network. Why don't we do this? It's obviously a huge source of revenue for companies like Google that kind of pioneered that. And, they have billions in dollars of revenue based on that model. So Amazon kind of did both those things simultaneously. And now fast forward to, present day, looking at Amazon's quarter one results, 60% of the sales that happen on their marketplace are 3P sellers. So they're like individuals or small companies. Sometimes that's a one-man show with a couple assistants. Sometimes it's a whole team. Like a lot of our clients have a team of full-time employees, warehouse, 3P centers, and everything like that. But they're not Adidas. They're not like the mega
Sure.
corporations that we all know that have been around for like a million years. There are people that started on Amazon. They're Amazon native. And so that's kind of when that all kicked off, I would say, 2014, 2015.
Mm-hmm. No, that's great. I appreciate the little rundown there. How do businesses selling on Amazon drive that external traffic to their catalog on the marketplace?
I think the main method for success for a lot of Amazon native brands has been successfully, let's say, optimizing, in some cases over the years, using a little bit of what you call like black hat tactics, like gamifying Amazon's algorithm, right? But Amazon has cleaned that up in the past 2, 3 years way better. Like it's much harder to get fake reviews. These are all good things, by the way. I'm not saying this is bad.
Yeah,
Much
yeah.
harder to get fake reviews, because consumer trust is being restored there. There's not as much like black hat activity going on where people are taking each other's listings down and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So the primary method, I'm going to get to your question. The primary method has been figuring out the on Amazon SEO, because Amazon has its own search engine, has its own catalog methods, has its own structured data. And so being able to be found and seen and rank there is really the key. Now in 2022 and early 2023, it's become harder and harder to become differentiated, like on platform, because everyone has found that level. Like anyone who's competent is doing that stuff, and it doesn't really set you apart anymore. It doesn't make you special. It's just like table stakes, right?
Interesting.
So now people are using other methods to drive external traffic, and there's so many of those. I'm happy to like dive into them. A lot of them are traditional, some of them are newer, but it's all very interesting there.
No, that and I talked with, I want to say his name was Ryan Flanagan, about some of these black hat techniques and how Amazon is like seriously cracked down on them. Maybe even overcorrected in a little bit of an effect. But that's kind of for a later day. So what are some of the specific services that AMZ Pathfinder offers to increase visibility and ROI for companies?
Yeah, I'll talk about ours first, because we actually do just like one arrow in the quiver. Like the quiver is full of many arrows, and we really specialize in just a couple. So when it comes to external traffic, we're really big fans of taking Google search traffic, which has billions of people every day looking for products, and channeling some of that to Amazon. And so taking some of that demand, that search intent, those customers who may or may not actually be Amazon shoppers already, and moving them over to Amazon and getting them to buy there. So this is like, how do I really position it? Think of the river of Amazon ad spend that our clients are already using. This is like a small tributary, a little stream that's kind of like branching onto that main river. And that's our favorite way of doing things. Like this year, we've had a lot of traction with that and have had a lot of success with current clients and some new clients doing that. But man, there's like so many ways. And another way that I really like, and I have a friend that has an agency that does this, but they use TikTok. TikTok is like one of these things that's super hot, like red hot trendy. And they work with like big brands like Sephora and stuff like that. And there's a component of virality that's built into some of these social platforms that if you understand, you can capture, and that really can get you much further. The analogy that I might use for like Google ads or like Amazon ads is it's just kind of like slow and steady. It chugs along. It's like a faucet where you turn it on and it just the water keeps running through. But if you have TikTok, it's like you've accidentally broken the dam, and then you have a deluge of interest and shoppers and everything. But figuring out how to like break that dam is like very difficult. So those are probably the two biggest ways that we are familiar with and that we like to see, TikTok and Google search. There are a lot more like I would say less traditional ways, at least in the Amazon space, is like post purchase sequences. So you follow up with people, you get their email, you get their text, you get their number, and then you follow up with them afterwards. There's ways to do that are totally compliant with Amazon. So you got to be careful with that. But that's really effective for building like lifetime value. People still use email. Yeah, I know it seems kind of ridiculous to some of the brands we talk about, but we're like, hey, do you have an email list? Have you sent out a blast to your email list? People still do this. Email is not dead. Yeah. Email is a great protocol. It's still open. It's for everybody. It's not dependent on any one service provider. There's no gatekeeper. So really, it's super powerful still, which is funny to think after all these years that like the hot new thing is email.
Yeah, I mean, there's some consistency to it. I'm surprised that there hasn't been something that's really, truly replaced email. I mean, that's the one thing that I probably look at more than anything else throughout my day, aside from text messages. And I hate being sold to over text messages. I'd much rather be sold to over emails.
Same.
That's my personal taste.
Same.
I'm interested. I wanted to follow up on this kind of your opinion on TikTok versus email advertising and something like that, because what I've found is some people who attempt to chase virality specifically in advertising, it can actually backfire. So they're trying to essentially engineer buzz. And we were talking a bit about during the show the value of authenticity, and anyone who's listened to the show more than once knows that transparency and authenticity I'm really big proponents and fans of. So do you think that can provide an obstacle for a brand if they're trying to chase some sort of buzz and audiences feel like they're being sold to,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you have to consider where the person is when you're reaching them. So
Okay.
the counter example I'll provide is when people are searching on Amazon or Google, they know they're searching for a product, and you're meeting them where they are with what you hope is the thing that they are after, and then you're putting them on that landing page or that product page. So you're just basically mating their intent with what you're offering. Engineering that on TikTok is far harder because someone who's just browsing around, like maybe they don't know. And I know I've just used a Sephora example as my friend's agency has worked with them. Like maybe they don't know that they need this like mascara or like eyeliner or something like that, but they'll come across it and they'll generate interest by seeing it in a way that is portrayed that like resonates with them. So I think what they do is they run ads. They have promoted content that's usually with UGC, like user generated content,
Sure.
and they place a lot of small bets. And some of these bets actually pay off. And they're not trying to like stir controversy or anything. When I say virality, I mean like they're not trying to be like, we got canceled, this kind of stuff that does resonate with a certain population in America.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is possible to do that. We've all seen these ads. We all know this. But no, it's just like, hey, this is what works for me. Like here am I, like your average Jane influencer. And so this is like what's working for me, and this is how I think about this. And some of those things, if they're promoted correctly, they get shown to the right people, it'll start to stir in the algorithm and carry on. Does it backfire? I don't have enough experience, man, to say like, yeah, I've seen it backfire, because that's not something that we deal with a lot.
Sure.
I have seen success stories because our clients will occasionally come to us and say, hey, we ran some Spark ads, which are like one of the main methods for advertising on TikTok, as I understand it. And, we did basically what I described. We placed a lot of bets with these kind of UGC content generators, and then 2 or 3 of them actually got some really good traction, and we saw a demonstrable like uplift in sales for this day or this week based on this. And so, that seems to be the method that people are doing now. If TikTok is around to stay in the U.S., I think that remains to be seen. A bit more of an open question. But I think that it's it certainly has organic traction. It's not like it didn't buy its way to the top. It did it by merit. So I can't really fault it.
I think I'm going to bet against it, if I'm being honest. I don't know a lot of social media platforms that have stuck around seriously, like claws in of the zeitgeist of like pop culture for 10 or 15 years. I mean, most people don't really use Facebook much anymore. They don't use Twitter as much anymore. I think kind of Instagram and TikTok has been those kind of 1 and 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I see those as 1 and 2, specifically in the ad space right now. So it'd be interesting to see what that looks like 5 or 10 years down the road. Just to switch gears, I was curious, kind of the differences between running like a Shopify store and an Amazon store, and how to kind of leverage both. So if I sell products on Amazon, for example, and have we'll say a Shopify store, how can I approach operating both simultaneously? Is it better to leverage my brand to drive traffic to Amazon, or vice versa? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the goal for most Amazon first brands is to build awareness on Amazon, to scale up in terms of size, sales volume, catalog, portfolio, brand presence, and then slowly migrate that off Amazon. Amazon sees the customers on Amazon as their customers. They do not see them as your customers. There are ways to be clever with that. Like I mentioned, product inserts earlier. That's one thing that is within Amazon TOS, because they can't possibly, stop everybody from doing that. As long as you don't put something in there that's like, please leave a 5-star review or else, which will definitely get you in trouble. Yeah, or else. That will absolutely get you in trouble. Do not do that. Yeah. But you can say, hey, this is our warranty, or like you scan this QR code to enter this giveaway for like another product. This is not tied to reviews, by the way. No giveaways and reviews. Don't do that. And then take those customers off. The trend that I've seen with many of the brands we work with is they start Amazon native, or sometimes they start with like a Kickstarter or something. They get a lot of traction on Amazon, give that a couple of years, and then they start to migrate out. The ultimate objective for a lot of these brands is to have their standalone Shopify, WooCommerce, whatever DTC website eclipse the revenue that they have on Amazon. The reason for that, like I said, Amazon thinks it's their customers and you have lower margins on Amazon, but the bonus of Amazon is like the eyeballs and the ease. The marketplace is already there, the audience is already there, all the infrastructure is already there. That was kind of the dream in 2015, like I mentioned earlier. A lot of people wanted to have, digital nomad lifestyle, start an e-com business, set up products. Amazon handles fulfillment. They handle this, they handle that. The reality is now most Amazon businesses have a margin that's anywhere from like 15 to 20%. Like 15% is like very normal now. And that's low, by the way. So like if you are selling D2C, usually your margins are like way better than 15%. But Amazon takes a lot of fees, category fees. There's advertising, which of course we manage, and that's like a necessary component to a large extent. But these things need to be carefully balanced. Think of it like a series of scales. You're trying to keep everything in equilibrium. If you run out of stock, that could be really bad. If you have product sourcing costs go up, which we certainly saw during COVID, after COVID, if you have supply chain problems, if it's not redundant, that's going to give you issues. So there's a lot of fragility in that system, which I think was laid bare during the pandemic, especially if your supply chains were long. But most businesses are trying to eventually, let's say, graduate from Amazon. Now they'll still stay there and hopefully they'll have a nice slice of revenue there because it can be a new customer acquisition channel if you do it right. But generally speaking, that's the way they do it. The other way that I've seen is bigger brands that are already established, that are in brick and mortar, that are in Walmart, which is like, one of the kings of like in-person retail in the US, of course. They go to Amazon with a very different perspective. For them, it's another sales channel they're expanding into. But Amazon is such a unique beast that they kind of need to work with agencies or hire multiple people in-house to like make sense of how to make it work. Because it's not like you can just put your content on like, I forget what they call it, but there's like these content distribution systems where you're like, all right, here's our photos, here's our bullet points, and it'll just distribute it to like 15 different marketplaces. And then we sell in all those marketplaces now. I think it's called an ERP. You can't really do that with Amazon. Amazon has its own way of doing things. You have to pay attention to all their rules and you have to look at your feedback and because they do things the Amazon way. So that's like the other way to look at it. And we work with both brands. We work primarily with like 3P sellers that are coming from the bottom up rather from the top down. But both are interesting to work with and provide their own like set of challenges.
And I can imagine, Amazon is going to be incentivized to have companies compete with each other. I mean, that's just kind of like capitalism 101 is that competition is going to be best for them. So having the end goal be to move away from that, where, they're diametrically opposite things, where I want my product to be sold and Amazon's going to want every product possible to be sold there. So I think that makes a lot of sense, just logically, Brent. So thank you.
Yeah, they call it the infinite shelf, actually, Alex. And I kind of disagree that it's infinite because most people don't look past, page 2 of the search results or the ads that show up. But, Jeff Bezos has a famous, somewhat cryptic quote, which is like, your margin is my opportunity, which is basically like saying, we're going to be the ones that at scale are able to come in and undercut. And we're the ones who are going to enforce MAP. So Amazon has done something for years, which is basically if you're selling on their marketplace and they find your product cheaper other places, they're going to either like ban you from the buy box or they're going to lower your price. They're going to make sure that they have the most attractive price because their whole nexus is like, we're the, one of the world's most customer-centric companies. And what does that mean? Low prices is one of those things. Like low prices, fast delivery, good customer service. These kind of things are like the triad of Amazon's existence. Now, if they've been able to reach that the last couple of years, I don't know. But that's like something that's very core to them. When you speak to people at Amazon, they always want to understand how it's going to help the end customer and where's the data to back it up. It's part of their culture. It's very fascinating to talk to people from Amazon.
Well, and one of the other things that you were touching on that I talked with the CEO of Debutify about recently is the value of reviews and how that word of mouth can impact a brand, a product, or Amazon, as a whole. So how important, in your opinion, are reviews and garnering reviews when trying to market products on Amazon?
It's one of the most critical things. And Amazon a few years ago, actually, Alex, made a distinction. So you have ratings and you have reviews. Ratings is
Okay.
where you, Alex, have a purchase on Amazon. You go in, you give it 4 stars. You don't give any explanation. That's a
That's it.
rating. A review is here's a photo, here's 2 paragraphs about why it's awesome or why it sucks. So
Hmm.
Amazon will weight reviews and ratings differently, and they look at individuals' rating history and actually weigh it differently. So the average you see on Amazon is actually a very fairly calculated average, in my opinion. They've had problems with it in the past, but like the reality is for any online purchase, and this is just data from the top of my head, our clients, they usually have a 1 to 3% review rate. So 100 products purchased, 3 reviews. Like that's normal. That's tiny, right? Anything you
Yeah.
can do to get that up is gonna make a huge impact on your like standing on Amazon. And you can take reviews to the bank. Like they're literally worth money. We saw this action the last couple of years of people buying Amazon businesses and aggregators buying sometimes individual ASINs, like individual product listings on Amazon, because hey, it has 10,000 reviews. That's like starting the 100-meter race 70 meters from the start line. It's like anyone else trying to get out the gate, you're already that far ahead.
Yeah.
So it is absolutely critical to have in place some kind of system for gathering reviews, weeding out ones that are bad if possible, and like catching dissatisfied customers before they do that. And there's a halo effect. Like this is something I do a lot. Maybe you've done this. You're looking at something online and you want to buy it from the website, maybe because it's better shipping. You want to support the company more directly instead of giving margin to Amazon. And you just look at the reviews on Amazon first. You're like, this is the place where I'm going to vet this. And there are extensions actually out there that'll help you, weed out the reviews in Amazon that are suspect and the ones that are good. I've noticed that generally speaking, the extensions are getting less and less useful because the reviews are more and more clean these days. But yeah, Amazon's kind of like a source of truth, right? So people check that not only if they're buying on Amazon, but everywhere else on the web.
Hmm. No, I think that's a great way to think about it is, you don't even have to financially support that business, but you can still use the service that it's providing. And that is a bit of a marketplace of
Mm-hmm.
people buzzing, talking about the products. And you don't, it's kind of like going to just hang out at the mall and instead of actually going into the stores at the mall a little bit.
Right. I
That
like that.
probably pretty old school way to think about it, but
Well, I was just thinking it's like the mall strikes back, because Amazon killed the mall, but now maybe the mall, like in that analogy, the mall
yeah,
strikes back. You go to the mall to look at stuff and buy it because you can't do it on Amazon.
yeah,
Uh, yeah.
and same day delivery. So, what are some of the easier ways that brands can increase their visibility on Amazon?
Yeah, sure. So when we think about visibility on Amazon, that usually means like being found in search because that's the way that most people come to products on Amazon. Is they go there and they type in a search query.
First two
Think about
pages, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, first 2 pages, or if you're on mobile, that's like an infinite scroll. And by the way, more than 50% of traffic is mobile, so never forget mobile is huge,
Sure.
whether on app or on the website. And the reality is, in a lot of developing countries, like let's say India, for example, which has a massive population and is more and more online every day, most people there, their first internet connected device is an Android phone. It's not a laptop. It's not a desktop computer like you and I had, Windows 95 in our parents' basement. Like dialing up on the internet. No. These people are on 5G. They have fast connections, and they have Amazon app on their phone, so they're shopping on mobile. And that's important to remember. That's an infinite scroll for the most part. You can just keep going on that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, visibility is about addressing the two areas that matter to Amazon. So there's like the art side of it, which is like, how's your copy? What's the brand perception? What's unique about it? Visually, how does it look? How do the videos make people feel when they look at it? And that's the art and the human side. And then there's the robots side, which is like, are you using the right keywords? Is it structured properly? Amazon has what's called a flat file, which is a very, very boring topic I don't want to get into. But basically, imagine like structured data inside of a very large spreadsheet. Amazon loves an Excel spreadsheet. And you can fill in all sorts of wonderful fields and data in there. And if you do that, then people searching will know, oh, this is keto. Oh, this is like gluten-free. Oh, this is like a veteran-owned business. There's other things that can pop up on Amazon. So you can get these badges, get these modifiers, be found in search. And because what you're doing is just filling out metadata for the search engine to properly index you. So like I said, it's this robot side and then the art creative side. And you need to mesh those two together. It's a little bit of each. I wouldn't say it's like too heavily weighed on either one, because you can have all the keywords in the world, but if your listing is like sterile and uninteresting and doesn't excite anybody, they might get there, but they're not going to convert. And Amazon takes every click, every conversion, every add to cart, every action on page as a signal, right? So if no one's converting, they're going to stop promoting your product as much. It's not going to do well in the rankings. It's probably not even going to be affordable to advertise. So it's really a blend of those two things and figuring those two things out.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're touching on something extremely valuable, Brent, and that is that ease of access, especially with certain demographics, certain cultures, of seeing something, immediately getting on my phone and thinking about buying it, that it is important to kind of cater to that impulsiveness, that people can have, instead of kind of being so in depth and over the top and I don't know, overt copy that feels like it's selling me. Sometimes people just want something that verifies something I already know, because I see it, I want it, just give me a reason why to get it, confirm my own
framing.
Biases,
I love that framing. Yeah. Confirm my belief for me, please. I will buy your thing.
Because that's how, realistically, that's how I think sometimes. That's how other people think. I mean, if I hear one person say, someone that I trust say, hey, you need to get this sort of microphone equipment, this specific one, I'll go, okay, I'll go online, most likely hear or read something that is echoing what he just told me, and I don't really need to get a second opinion. That's
exactly
how I am as a shopper, and I feel like a lot of other people are like that. So being able to cater to but how is it kind of trying to be able to cater to both types of shoppers, ones that could be like me, who are impulsive? I'm generally a decisive person. I know I'm kind of rambling a bit, but when I go to the grocery store with my significant other, she'll spend 5 minutes figuring out which Chex Mix to get, and I'm like, boom, this one right off the shelf. I'm just a much more impulsive and decisive shopper. She's much more, looking at the prices, what's kind of the calorie count, that sort of thing. So how are you able to cater to both audiences, specifically on Amazon?
That's a wonderful question. And I like how, Alex, you got no time for Chex Mix, man. You are just in, out. you're making that decision. I'm
a 20-minute grocery shopper, man.
The sweet one, the salty one, corn, I don't care. Boom, done. I love it. I usually get lost in some of the aisles. I live in France, by the way, so some of the supermarkets here have like three aisles of just like yogurt. It's a big thing in France. People love yogurt. So that you get lost in those yogurt aisles, and that's where my head starts to spin. I don't feel that same way online. I mean, I think what a lot of people do on Amazon, and this bears out in the data, is they will, buzz through the Amazon ecosystem. They'll add a bunch of stuff to cart, but adding it to cart doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to buy it. Because if you look at the rate from cart adds to purchases, for some products, it's incredibly low, especially higher ticket items, $300-$400. We have clients that sell stuff that's even like over $1,000 US. And those have a lot of cart ads. People consider it. They come back to it after a couple of days, maybe. They wait for it to have a coupon or the price to drop, which, by the way, is a little Amazon shopper tip. You can get an email when they drop the price or a coupon goes live. You can save some money. Yeah, that's a classic move. And so I think there is still comparison shopping going on. But at the same time, Amazon's whole conceit with Prime is like, as much friction as there is with online shopping, remove it. Literally, I think they patented one click, right? Like one click checkout, which I use all the time for Kindle books because they're digital, right? So I get a book recommendation from a trusted source. Like you said, I was an entrepreneur friend who says, oh, you got to read this book. I buy it immediately. I don't think twice about it. It's $10, 12 euros, whatever. It's not enough for me to think about it, and then I'll get to it. But obviously higher ticket items, it requires like a longer consideration period. I think it also really depends on demographics. I'm going to pick on the Germans a little bit because I got a lot of German friends in the ecosystem here. I live close to Germany. I go there for conferences occasionally, but there's massive cultural differences between a society that is like the US, where consumerism is like a group sport and like everyone is in it and like buying stuff all the time, versus Germany, where they're very interested in durability and quality and the specifications of something. They're not so focused on price. They want to own it for years. And famously, copywriting in German, already difficult because of the language, but secondarily difficult because the things that Germans are interested in is not really the same kind of stuff that Americans are. They're not interested in your long story about how you grew up in the suburbs and your dog did this, and so you made this dog toy, which is like the best dog toy ever. They want to know like how large it is, what materials it's made out of, is it high quality, is it going to last, will the dog get sick, well, how will the dog enjoy it? They want to know all the specific details and specifications. They're not interested in like the marketing stuff, where I might be more taken by that. Maybe you, because of our shared American cultural background, will be like, oh, that's such a cool story about that dog toy. I don't know how long it is. It doesn't matter. And then you might order it and be like, oh, it's too small. My dog's actually like a huge dog. So that's one difference always to keep in mind for these listings and for consideration is, who is the culture you're addressing here? And Amazon is in many countries now. They're in like half of Europe.
Yeah.
Sweden was fairly recent. Poland a couple years ago, launching in South Africa and Colombia this year with any luck. So they continue to expand. And all these cultures are very different places. I mean, I think the two that are probably the most similar are Canada and the US, because, our North American brothers there, we have a lot in common with them culturally. But everywhere else, UK and US, quite different. Obviously, France, Germany, quite different. Poland versus Colombia, those two places couldn't be more different. So when you are a brand scaling across all these marketplaces, if you're lucky enough to do that, each of these marketplaces has to be tackled with a different context. I'm not sure if that answers the question too directly, but I'm fascinated by these cultural differences as someone who travels in Europe for business and for pleasure a lot.
No, I love it. I mean, on a previous episode, I was talking with a gentleman, Dwayne Brown, who lived in Canada and lived in 3 different continents, 6 different cities, traveled to 40 different countries. And we kind of, we're breaking down the similar thing and just how fascinating it is that, people still can have the same goal. And that's, I need to buy this thing, but the parameters in which they decide to actually buy that thing can be diametrically opposite, So I think that's very, very fascinating to me. To kind of switch gears a little bit, Brent, what is your favorite ad type right now?
On Amazon and the ecosystem itself, or off Amazon?
Probably off Amazon to get people to a product on Amazon would be my shot.
I think quite simply, like I said, we just use Google Ads. That's our main external traffic method. Now we use Google Ads with what's called an image extension. So this gives a little bit of visual flair, because we all know what Google search looks like, because it hasn't really changed much for the past 15, 20 years. Maybe AI is going to shake that up soon, but for the time being, it's like, okay, here's a bunch of text, and here's like a page with results. If we can have a visual representation, a high quality image of our product on the page, then that is something that we find has higher click-through rate, is more eye-catching, and will drive people to Amazon knowing full well what it looks like before they even get there. I'll throw in my bonus answer, which is, if we're talking about internal Amazon advertising, because the majority of what we do is this internal Amazon advertising. They have their own ecosystem, they have their own media network. And the one that's probably the most exciting for me is what's called sponsored brands video. So it's basically give us a 25 to 30 minute video clip. It can be a lifestyle, it can be user generated, let's say portrait style, mobile phone video. It depends on the product, it depends on the circumstance and the keyword. But those are really exciting, because it's like Amazon's finally coming into the modern era, embracing video a lot more in the past year and a half. And we've been rolling that out wherever possible. They even have a little video builder inside of their interface that you can use if you don't have a Hollywood studio at your back, or a good team of video editors on hand. Not too hard to come by these days. But if you want to whip it up yourself and have some footage, go for it. So yeah, that would be my answer. Those two things are exciting. Big fan of those.
No, and the ability to film and video anything very quickly is fascinating to me. I told you before the show that I have a background in production. I've worked in TV and music videos and stuff like that. I actually have to film something later today. So nice. My argument in filming stuff is everyone can do this on their iPhone. So if you hire me to do it, you will separate yourself from the herd. And I know that
Right.
feels kind of like a cheesier pitch, but I think that is the reality. Is it kind of holds those two spaces at the same time. Is everyone has the access to do it, so everyone's very okay at it, and
Yeah.
and everyone can maybe garner some sort of, whether that's following or profit or revenue, financial support, whatever. But that's not like their day job. It's like
No.
auxiliary stuff to help me make more money for my business. So I don't necessarily need to spend money on it because I can do it to myself. I just think that ease of access is something that I've noticed just explode in the last like 3 years. Honestly, I think people learned a skill set during COVID and now are kind of trying to implement it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that accelerated it. I'm exceedingly mediocre at videos myself. I'll chime in on that. Actually, I'll say one thing, which is the first time I saw that kind of emerge was with Vine. R.I.P. Vine.
Sure.
I loved Vine. That
Love
was like
Vine.
such a great app. That was probably my favorite social media app ever to exist because it was such a weird, quirky kind of like. And I think it was ahead of its time, honestly. Because now we have all TikTok, obviously, and Instagram Reels and all these other video formats, YouTube Shorts, and it was just ahead of its time. But that was when it really opened my eyes to like, oh, someone with like an iPhone 4G, which is like the fifth or sixth iPhone, not even like that advanced compared to the supercomputers we have now, can make like really compelling short form content just by the nature of their own creativity and mind. And that really democratized a lot of that stuff and opened up a whole new world for me because I had been, a user of Twitter at that point, but that was all just text, right? That's great too.
Yeah.
But when there's like short form video, it changes everything. And people are very familiar with that format now. I think everyone's kind of accustomed to seeing that. So much so that some of the videos that we do run for clients or work quite well in the Amazon ecosystem are these kind of like low production value videos. Now we have clients that spend, $10,000 to have a professional video shoot, and they can use that not only with Amazon, but like on like, real commercials online and stuff like that. But, the proof of concept handheld portrait mode stuff also works surprisingly well. I mean, we have the data to bear that out. So much so that I was really surprised when we first started doing it. I was like, there's no way this is going to work, but it does actually.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that totally kind of puts a punctuation mark on what I was trying to kind of lead into. So I really appreciate your insight and your opinion on that. And personally, when it comes to Vine, I think that its popularity and nostalgia from people our age is kind of from that originality. You never would come across two that were ever the same. And I don't know how many kind of Instagram Reels or TikToks where I have to see a person on the street with their cell phone with a microphone on it, talking to some person who's like, what do you do for a living? And it's just like so repetitive that it feels watered down and inauthentic. Like I'm chasing views, or people are hiring other people to do something that is so formulaic at work. People throwing ping pong balls into cups just pops up everywhere, and I just keep hitting show me less, but it doesn't work. But that's I'm on my Lewis Black like old man rant type thing here now.
Hey, he's good too. I appreciate it.
I'm interested if a brand sells an extremely similar product to another brand on Amazon. Speaking of competition, how can they compete or increase their visibility and in turn their market share over a competing product that is essentially, the same on the surface? What are those differences that they can make?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, man. So, what we've seen with a lot of products on Amazon is someone will discover usually in the Amazon space, they call it a niche, right? Oh, it's a niche. I found this,
Sure.
like money niche, this keyword that no one's exploiting. And they'll source a product, they'll get it in there, they'll get some good reviews, they'll iterate on it, they'll make it better. Soon enough, it will pop up on the radar of other people and then say, ooh, this product in this space is doing quite well. Why don't we chase those same dollars? And then that keyword or that niche, and kind of surrounding demand stream, let's call it, will get exploited by multiple companies, brands, people sourcing. And what we've seen the last couple of years also is the rise of primarily Chinese factories, because that's where many, many things in the world come from. But of course, many other things come from Southeast Asia or Central Eastern Europe. And they are getting in the game directly. So the question becomes, if you are sourcing products from China, but the factory or a factory that's almost the same thing is doing the same thing and putting them on Amazon, and now they have ChatGPT and other AI tools to help them with branding and marketing and all the aspects we talked about earlier that make a product stand out. What can you do to differentiate and stand out? You have to have a moat of some kind, because they're going to be able to undercut you on cost. And I think, as Seth Godin said, the worst thing about a race to the bottom is you might win, and then nobody has any margin at all.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely what has happened on a lot of niches or sub markets on Amazon these days, Alex. And it's definitely worrying. I'm not sure I have a great response to that, besides to say your brand is probably your best moat. What you do and how you can address the culture is probably your best moat. So, okay, let's just assume this is a scenario. There's a factory in China that's sourcing the same product you have, but they don't have the same kind of follow-up sequence. They don't have the same kind of intelligent branding. They don't have the same social media presence you do. They don't have an email list that they can use to direct people to Amazon and like boost sales that way. They don't have the same kind of on-the-ground presence. These are the moats that you have to use. It's no longer just, our keywords are better than their keywords, and we're slightly smarter at ad spend than they are. Those things are all necessary. That's table stakes. But you have to have some other kind of moat to protect you, because, they're storming the castle, to continue the moat analogy.
Yeah. And I think there's something to be said for the tangible, like we are better. How, show me the money a little bit, So I think that essentially helps me at least a little bit to not just cater to my confirmation bias. If someone's like, yeah, I think you're better, but tell me how, tell me why. I'm interested in your last 8 years. We've talked about how that is practically a lifetime in the e-commerce community and in Amazon's trajectory. What are the biggest changes that you've seen in the last 8 years when working with Amazon?
Yeah, the first thing is that advertising has gone from what I would call a hobby at Amazon. Like, honestly, in the early days, it felt like they had a couple of interns that they hired, and they asked one of their bosses, and they said, "Hey, can we do like advertising?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, kid. Here you go. Here's like $20,000. There's an extra server in the closet over there. Go for it." To something that actually is Amazon's probably their biggest bright spot on their most recent, quarter one earnings. As we're recording this, the Amazon's quarter one earnings came out last Thursday, so like a week and a couple of days ago. And yeah, AWS growth is slightly slowed. Their marketplace is kind of stagnant, but their advertising grows quarter over quarter and year over year by double digits, 15, 21%. And so it's no longer a hobby. Amazon has like 8% of the advertising domestic market in the US now, digital advertising. They are third after Facebook and Google. Sorry, Google and Facebook. Google's the biggest. Yeah. I'm just rattling this off the top of my head. Some of those numbers might be a little bit inaccurate, but like the idea is all roads lead to digital advertising eventually. And I am worried, if I'm totally honest with you, that Amazon's reliance or focus on advertising, which is great money, they're starting to get a little bit addicted to it, is going to run counter to their main goal of customer experience, customer first user experience, because too many ads can start to degrade that customer experience. And I've seen it wax and wane over the years. And I think right now it's kind of at a stable point. I think during the pandemic, they dialed it up a little bit too much, and it actually was a problem. It started to hurt their brand perception. So that's the biggest change that I've seen, is it's gone from a hobby to a multi-billion-dollar a quarter industry that has hundreds of agencies, many service providers. Everyone and their brother is an Amazon ad consultant now. So it's obviously a much more crowded pond. But we're still in the game. We're still doing pretty well. So I guess I can rest easy with that, at least.
No, absolutely. And I'm interested. This is one of the last questions I'll have, because I'm extremely interested in like the production industry and kind of the streaming wars type of thing, and how Netflix has rolled out, a commercial subscription, and Amazon has actually been very steadily rolling out their freebie service, which is essentially, Prime Video, but with ads. And
Yes.
I'm interested in your opinion on that. I think that that is a clear and evident example of exactly what you're saying, Brent. And that's going from have this free content that we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on to, you know, oh no, we're probably spending too much money. We need some of this back. And how, you know, on the show, we talk a lot about digital advertising, but I'm interested to see if people in the digital space move toward streaming advertising, since that's becoming more of a popular thing. Especially, I don't think it's unbelievable to think that I can turn on my TV, hit episode of TV on Freevee, an ad comes up for Tide Pods, and I can immediately just hit OK, and it's going to send me to the Amazon app to buy Tide Pods right there while I'm watching TV. So I'm kind of interested on your thoughts there.
Yeah, that's really prescient. That's a great insight, because the reality of what you're describing, it already exists. Because essentially, what we've talked about so far with advertising, we've really focused on like bottom and mid funnel, but there's a whole world of like top of funnel. People call it tofu, which I like just because the acronym's great. Top of funnel, which is like, hey, if you're Ford Motor Company, I have a new truck like the F-150 Lightning or whatever that one is, right? You want to get the word out about that. Well, you can work with Amazon and you can get your ads for that on, they do Thursday Night Football, I think. They have rights to that. They have, major TV shows that are like super popular. They have 150 or 140 million Prime members in the US, not even to mention European countries and other places. And so that is a massive cookieless engaged shopper and customer base. So they are looking at more and more ways to scale advertising to those. And that is becoming a bigger and bigger part of what Amazon is communicating with us as agencies too. So that's absolutely happening. Another thing you might find interesting is there's voice ads now, like audio ads, because sure. Alexa is a hugely popular device. And there's actually audio ads that play. We don't run any of these for our clients. They're in beta right now for a lot of people, but it's possible to do that. It's absolutely possible to have a Fire Stick and turn it on and see an advertisement for, I don't know, something. I can't think of a good example. Maybe Ford Motor Company, the Lightning car again. Twitch is owned by Amazon. IMDb is owned by Amazon. Diapers.com is owned by Amazon. They own several photography blogs that they bought many, many, many years ago. Zappos, the shoe company. All of these platforms have users and data that's all being exchanged. And Amazon has something now called Marketing Cloud, which basically allows you to tie together these different touch points and understand what a customer journey might look like. So it's possible that you could, and actually we've done a test with this with one of our clients. They wanted to run like a geo-targeted campaign on Amazon's DSP, their demand side platform, which is like display advertising, and then track when people went into Whole Foods in person in the New York metro area and bought a specific product that was their product. And you can actually do that with Amazon Marketing Cloud and DSP. You can tie that together. So that is crazy to me that you could say, all right, this person saw this mobile ad on their phone, or they watched it on their streaming TV with like a Fire Stick, and then they went in and they bought this like carbonated drink at a Whole Foods in Brooklyn. It's like, okay, we know that because it's the same user, because they have different devices and we can track across their account, right? It's not, but by cookieless, I mean, it's not cookies like we have for, web browsing traditionally, where it's like, this is a user session. It's like, this is an account. It's account based. And so for that reason, the data quality is better. And Amazon is betting, I think, really big on using that to have a greater advertising platform over the next 5-10 years, as the marketplace, which has never been super profitable for them, is less and less and less of their business. Advertising is going to be more of it. Grocery, I think they're betting big on. Advertising is going to be another one, AWS. So my prediction, if I had to make one, is like, yeah, the marketplace is going to diminish in importance, and these other things are going to come to the fore. And yeah, who knows what they're going to do next with advertising. They're certainly putting their full muscle behind it.
Yeah, we'll check in a year to 5 to figure out how our predictions are doing, Brent.
Yeah, time capsule here.
Yeah, I love it. Before we wrap up, the last question I always ask guests revolve around essentially the importance of mental health stability in an industry that is extremely stress-inducing and demanding. I think it's important to value work-life balance, work-life harmony. So, Brent, what are some things that you do in your free time to ensure a healthy mental health in such a stressful industry?
Yeah, sure. I'll say one thing about work first, which is my like hack. I guess I didn't realize till I was probably like in my late 20s is understand what time of day I'm most productive naturally and guard that
Ooh,
time like it's precious, absolutely
ooh.
precious time. Do not allow distractions to pull you away. Don't let people take you in other directions. Don't let your team do this. Like, this is your precious time. Guard that. And then the time when you're off and you know you're not so great, that's the time you can use to read or take a nap or take a walk or whatever. So that is like my number one tip. If I had to give one, that's not always possible. And I worked in offices and other things, retail for many years where you can't really do that. But if you set your own schedule, you can. And boy, is that a luxury, because everyone, I think, has a chronotype or like a natural rhythm that they find
Mhm.
themselves in. The other thing for me is a really easy answer, man. I'm a really big cyclist. I'm really into cycling. I ride, 3 times a week, depending on the weather and how I'm feeling. I got a bunch of different bikes. I live in France, so cycling here is a big part of the culture. I'm also into hiking and swimming and stuff like that, camping. But generally speaking, yeah, cycling and forms of like yoga and flexibility are like my big things I'm into.
No, that's great. I love it. I love that first advice too, because people always give me grief because I'm most productive at like midnight or something like
If
that.
that's your thing, that's your thing,
Um,
man. You're the night owl. You're the night owl. I think that's the
and and
chronotype.
and it is what it is. There's not a lot of people texting me or calling me at midnight, so that's the time that I get a lot done. But look, Brent, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Good luck with AMC Pathfinder, and yeah, it's been a blast, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I could do this for another 30 minutes. Thanks for flowing with me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good one.